Hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 29 of the Fourth String Sports Podcast. I am your host, Brady, with my co-hosts, Mitch and Skylar. Gentlemen, how are we feeling tonight?
Fucking shitty, man. There's no Big Ten football this year.
Yes, and we will get to that. Skylar, how are you feeling?
That
good, huh? Well, I'm great, gentlemen. Happy to be here. So, yes, as Mitch alluded, there is word that there will be no Big Ten or Pac-12 football this fall, possibility for the spring, but we'll get into it. We're also going to look at the NBA bubble. We will have a play-in. The Grizzlies cannot clinch the 8 seed. We talked about how there was kind of an understanding the Trailblazers would be one team, but who the other team was going to be. And now it looks like absolutely it's going to be the Suns who won again. They're 7-0 in the bubble. We're also going to do a series preview as we have our first couple of matchups for the playoffs locked in. We're going to talk about the Bucks versus the Magic and the Raptors versus the Nets. And then we're going to get to our main entree tonight, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team.
We also have our what's list, right?
Yeah. So we got the Pittsburgh Steelers as the main entree, but then we've also got our what's list where we're breaking down the top 10 hardest places to play in college football. We have our What a Putts, our hero segment. We've got a listener email to get through. So we've got a lot of stuff to get through on this episode. It's going to be a very interesting episode. I appreciate everybody for listening. Thanks for listening on whatever form you listen on, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, the whole nine yards. We appreciate everything. Again, we're seeing our numbers just steadily go up, and it's fantastic to look at. So we appreciate everybody. And email us, fourthstringsp@gmail.com. We had our listener email on the last one. We're going to have another one today. So I'm going to thank Scott for that one. And we're just going to get ready for the show here. The next episode we have is who's the next episode?
Seattle,
and then San Francisco right after them.
Yep.
And then,
or is it San Fran then Seattle?
San Fran then Seattle. Yeah, there you go. I forgot how my ABDs work. San Fran then Seattle, and then we're going to be wrapping up really quickly here. Only a couple of teams left. Pro football starts the beginning of September here, supposedly. NBA basketball here, we're about to get into the playoffs. MLB is still going strong. They're about 15 games in, so about a quarter of the way through the season, depending on if you're the Cardinals or not. The sports world is just going to continue to ramp up here. But let's get into the big news. And the big news is that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 officially announced that there will be no fall football this year. So teams like Wisconsin, Nebraska, Stanford, USC, Oregon, Ohio State, the list goes on and on, will not be playing football this year. Now, we've all talked about it. We kind of have differing opinions. But what's kind of the gut reaction? How are you guys feeling with this announcement?
Obviously it sucks, just as a fan, not to get to see your team play this fall. We talked about a little bit, Brady, in our group chat, that it's really weird that they came out with the revised schedule and had a plan for everything, and then less than a week later they decide to cancel it altogether. So I'm really curious to see what was the biggest factor for them to cancel, since to my knowledge COVID really hasn't been updated or anything that has gotten worse that they would need to cancel at all. So those are my initial thoughts to it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of I was waiting for it, honestly. We all kind of knew that the sport to get axed most likely was college football in the fall, because just the infrastructure there and how decentralized it is. So I mean, it's disappointing, but I mean, as of right now, there's still two conferences that are planning on having football. So we might have some semblance of college football, but it's not Big Ten or Pac-12 football. And I think we can all agree we'd much rather watch Nebraska and Wisconsin play than Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, the big thing that came out was an article that was just recently posted, actually on July 27th, so just about 2 weeks ago, in which a study did link that of 100 patients who had COVID and recovered at home, 78 patients showed structural changes to the hearts. 76 had evidence of a biomarker signaling cardiac injury typically found after a heart attack, and 60 had signs of inflammation. I think just the fact that we still don't know a lot about this disease is a massive question. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. I'm upset. But I do truly feel like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are doing this from a place of compassion. I feel like, and you could argue it's liability, and that's fine, but there's so much unknown about this disease that I think they don't want to risk putting the players, the faculty, the family of players, the family of faculty, staff, people at risk of this. Because even if you limit capacity down to 10,000 people, you're still going to have vendors. You're still going to have a lot of stuff. And if somebody has it, man, that stuff can spread like wildfire. So I'm sad. I'm disappointed. I'm upset. Things obviously change. Like Skylar said, there's still going to be football so far in the Pac-12, the ACC, and the SEC. So we should get some semblance of college football. Most of D2 and D3 have canceled their seasons. University of Massachusetts joined University of Connecticut in officially canceling their football season as is.
As is tradition.
As is tradition. So it's a wait and see thing. I mean, it's upsetting, but I do truly feel like it's the smart thing to do here. I think it's the safest thing to do. And if it means we don't get football this year, it means we don't get football, and then we just pick back up in the fall, you know?
I will say something, though. I'm glad that the two conferences that decided to go was the Big Ten and the Pac-12, because if they do come back in the spring, we can still get the Rose Bowl, boys. We can still get the Rose Bowl.
Yes, we can. I can't wait to watch Iowa play, Colorado in the Rose Bowl. And not Iowa, I meant Illinois.
No. This could be cool. This could be cool. I mean, the Coliseum or the Rose Bowl in July, I think is what they're looking at, right? Is when the end of the season would be. That could be fun. We would be like, this is the spring 2021 championship between Ohio State and whoever the fuck wins Pac-12.
Yeah.
California. Let's go Cal.
Oh, God, no, not Cal. It'll be Oregon, probably.
Oregon.
No, I mean, there's still the chance there. And unfortunately, this comes down to the fact that Skylar pointed out. Had we been taking this stuff seriously since April, since March, and even before then, had we been taking it seriously before it really broke out here in the United States, it wouldn't be as bad, and we'd be ahead of it as a lot of other places are. I mean, England has had soccer for the last couple of months because they've taken it a lot more seriously. Other countries have rugby and soccer and baseball going on because they've taken it a lot more seriously. I was even talking to a coworker who originally came from El Salvador. They said their country is completely shut down. If you fly into their country, you're on a 2-week quarantine before they let you out of the airport. So had that stuff been taken seriously by the citizens of the United States, all people from,
top to bottom,
then we'd have college football. And it's just a shame that we won't. But I think sensibly it's the smartest thing to do here. But one sport that we do have is NBA basketball. And NBA basketball has proved to be magical. Like, it's
everything
a
we
blessing.
hoped it to be.
It's everything we've hoped and more. The Suns just won their 7th game.
What the fuck is going on?
Ben Simmons is going to be out for the playoffs. Giannis has to have tooth surgery. Who knows what's happening? Disneyland is full of surprises.
Joel Embiid went out too.
Yeah, he did.
Hurt.
Yeah, he's hurt. Disneyland is Disney is full of surprises, and it's beautiful. It's great. So let's talk about this bubble. So as I stated, we will have a play-in. The 8th seed Memphis Grizzlies, due to their losses, cannot clinch the 8th seed, which means that there will definitely be an NBA play-in for that final seed. Now, if you don't remember, the way the play-in works is that only if the 9th seed finishes within 4 games of the 8th seed, there will be a play-in. The 9th seed has to beat the 8th seed 2 times in a row. The 8th seed only has to win once. Right now, Memphis sits, technically speaking, a half game behind Portland, but that's only because I think Portland hasn't officially played right now.
Portland won. Portland, yeah, no. I think Portland will take over because they won today and Memphis lost.
Correct. So right now, Portland would have the 8th seed. Memphis would be a half game behind Portland, but tied for 9th place with Phoenix and San Antonio. So Portland seems to be the lock for that 8th seed. The question is between Memphis, Phoenix, and San Antonio, who are all considered 20 games back from the number 1 seed, who's going to get that other spot?
I think it's pretty easy. It's got to be the Suns. I mean, they haven't lost in the bubble yet, and Devin Booker seems to be the man right now. So I'm putting my chips for the Suns to play the Trailblazers in a play-in series, which I think everybody in the NBA as a fan wants.
Yeah, see, as much as I want the Suns to be in it, if I'm putting money on it, I'm putting it on the Spurs because if the three games that we're going to be looking at, it's going to be Memphis versus the Bucks. I don't think Memphis is going to win that game.
A lot of Bucks players are out. Giannis won't play. Middleton won't play. DiVincenzo won't play.
Okay,
Wesley Matthews won't play.
But still, your team's deep. The Bucks are deep.
Yeah, correct. True.
So there's that. I mean, Memphis could win. They could.
Yeah.
Dallas versus Phoenix. That's going to be a rough game. That's going to be a great game. Devin Booker versus Luka. If Luka plays, I hope he does. Mm-hmm. And then Spurs versus Utah. Utah's looked like shit in the bubble. I'm putting money on the Spurs because I think that they can win that game. I think that they have the easiest win. I'm just going to see what a tiebreaker would be because if the Suns and the Spurs, like if all three win, who takes it then?
Well, and that's what's interesting because if you look at it, so feasibly speaking, the two big games to watch are going to be Dallas versus Phoenix and the Spurs versus the Jazz because feasibly Dallas is a game and a half behind the Jazz for the 6th seed. So if the Jazz lose and the Mavericks win, feasibly the Mavericks could jump Dallas. And instead of having to play the Clippers, they then get to play the Nuggets. Now, how exactly that's going to work out, because technically they have the same amount of wins, but the Mavericks have three more losses than the Jazz. I don't know how that's going to work out with percentages. We'll wait and see. But that game is going to be interesting because then San Antonio plays the Jazz. So that game, San Antonio versus the Jazz, is going to be on Thursday at 5:30. So it should be over by the time we record on Thursday. And Dallas versus the Suns will be at 3 p.m. on Thursday. So by the time we record on Thursday, we should know fully who is in the play-in tournament there. So if the Spurs win and the Mavs win, the Spurs probably get into that play-in tournament. If the Suns win, they're most likely in. So it's a toss-up. I mean, I'd love to see the Suns continue this run. Do I think they could beat the Blazers 2 times in a row? Who knows? But nobody thought the Suns would win 7 in a row either. Against
really good teams.
Against really good teams, exactly. This is what's most interesting because it's an absolute toss-up. No one thought the Suns would be this good coming out.
Nobody thought the Spurs would be this good in the bubble.
Nobody thought the Spurs would be this good. The Trailblazers look so dynamite because Nurkic is back. It's so great to watch. I'm so in love with the bubble right now.
Honestly, like, here's the thing. Whoever is going to be in the play-in game, I'm going to watch it because it's either I'm going to get Dame Lillard versus Booker. Yeah. I'm going to get Popovich at a chance of probably maybe his last playoff run. I mean, like, this is – or I could get John Morant in playoff mode. So no matter what it is, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a recipe for an amazing play-in, no matter who's in it.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds – it's beautiful. It's like, oh, spicy magic right on the tongue there. It's great. I'm so excited to watch it. Other sad news, unfortunately – despite the best efforts of the NBA, Zion and the Pelicans will not be playing for the tourney, for the play in there. And it ends, what's his name? JJ Redick? JJ Redick's 21-year streak of being in the playoffs, going back high school, college, and then all through the NBA. It was funny in their first press conference, JJ, like the first thing he said to Zion was, I got a good thing going for me, don't fuck it up. And hey, guess who fucked it up?
It wasn't
Gentry.
It was Gentry.
Yeah. If he wasn't, smoking weed with the Black Lives Matter protesters, that was one of the funniest stories. Did you hear that story?
Yeah, I heard it. I wish Coach Bud did it just because of his nickname.
Yeah, right. It was like a protest going on in New Orleans, and like some dude lit up a joint, and the guy started next to him. He's like, "Oh, that smells like good stuff," and he looks over, and it's Alvin Gentry, head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. Which is fantastic. Sacramento officially eliminated as well. And the saddest team in the bubble, the Washington Wizards, officially eliminated as well. So that brings us to the matchups that are absolutely locked in. So far, only 2 matchups in the NBA are completely locked in, and that is Milwaukee versus Orlando, the Magic, and that is Toronto versus the Brooklyn Nets. So let's do a quick series preview. We're going to try to hammer out as many of these as we can. before the playoffs actually start. Let's start out with the easy one, Milwaukee versus the Magic. This is a 4-game series to me, assuming that Giannis's mouth surgery isn't terrible, which it doesn't sound like it will be. There's no reason the Bucks shouldn't sweep the Magic the same way they did the Pistons last year. The Magic's put up a good fight in the first round last year. Remember, they beat the Raptors in Game 1 due to Michael Carter-Williams finally deciding he could shoot threes, and a great game by DJ Augustine. I don't see that happening. I think that the strength of the Magic is their big men and the explosiveness of Markelle Fultz. And I think defensively, the Bucks are just too good. The Magic don't shoot well from the three-point line. And even though that's the Bucks' weakness defensively, I don't think the Magic take care of it or take advantage of it. I think Bucks win that series in 4, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think it'll be a clean sweep by the Bucks. When you just look at the matchups, I mean, the Magic really only have Aaron Gordon as their best player. Vucevic, it looks like a flash in the pan last year. He's not played up to how he did last year. And the rest of the lineups, and then the bench for the Bucks is way better than what the Magic have. And then obviously Mike Budenholzer is a better coach than Steve Clifford. So, easy sweep.
I just want one win. I want the Magic to get one, and I'll be happy because I think we all know that the Bucks are just going to demolish them. But I agree with both you guys. I think that the way that you beat this team is you make somebody else, but besides Giannis, win the game, and you shoot the 3-point well. And I don't think the Magic can do that right now. Aaron Gordon hasn't really played a lot. I agree. Vucevic doesn't look like how he played last year. And breaking news: Big 12 is proceeding with fall football.
Yeah, that I did see. So business as usual for the Big 12.
But I agree with both. I agree with both you guys. I don't think that the Orlando Magic have the shooting capability to beat Milwaukee, and that's really how you beat this team. I mean, we saw it when Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero were going off in the first half against the Bucks. We saw it with the Celtics, who put up a really good fight there at the end. That's how you beat them, and I don't think, and they don't have the star power either. So yeah, that's an easy sweep for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think absolutely. In the 4 times they met this season, the Bucks swept the Magic all 4 times, 123-91 in the first matchup, and then they beat them 110-101 in the second. They beat them 111-100 in the third, and they beat them 112-101 in the fourth matchup. So they swept them all 4 times. I think this is going to be a little bit of a warm-up series for Milwaukee, just the same way as the one against the Pistons was last year. I don't think that the Magic really stand much of a chance against the Bucks in this matchup. So let's move on here to the second matchup, the one that I think a lot of fans maybe were really looking forward to with some of the star power that the Brooklyn Nets brought in over the offseason. But Kyrie's not playing, KD's not playing, Jamal Crawford is there. But I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. We have Raptors versus the Nets. I wouldn't be surprised if the Nets squeak one out because the Raptors do have a tendency to drop a game that they shouldn't. But this is a Raptors team that is way too good. This is, to me, I think the Raptors sweep this series as well, unless Jamal Crawford goes off for 45 every single game.
Yeah, this is another clean sweep. The Nets basically are the Karis LeVert and Joe Harris show. They really don't have much else. I mean, they brought in Crawford, but I'm pretty sure he's hurt right now, so he hasn't really played. And the Raptors, even though they lost Kawhi and Danny Green, they're basically the same team and they're playing like the same team. So, with that and Nick Nurse being the golden child for coaches right now, it's, easily the Raptors are going to win this series.
Nick Nurse inspires I can't say it. People that wear glasses everywhere. Because I can't say the word that I want to. But no, I agree with you guys. I think that the Nets have been playing actually pretty scrappy the last couple games, winning games that they probably shouldn't. Even with the Bucks resting a couple players, that I still didn't think the Nets had a chance in that game. So I say that maybe they can squeak 1 or 2 games out against the Raptors because, again, the Raptors, it's a long shot. I say it's more likely that they put 1. They could put 2 just out of sheer Brooklyn, scrappiness. But I agree with you guys. This is a series that the Raptors should win.
Yeah, to me, the Nets, if they're going to win a game, it's either going to be game 1 or it's going to be game 3. They're either going to come out and pop the Raptors in the mouth, kind of like the Magic did last year, and then the Raptors will just backdoor sweep them. Or they're going to be down 2-0 in the series and pull a game out of their rear end, and then the Raptors will win the other 2. These teams met up 3 times last season. The Raptors won 2. The Nets won 1 matchup. Raptors won the 2 matchups with a score of 110 to 102 and a score of 121 to 102. And then they met up 4 times with the Nets winning 1 and the Raptors winning 3. They then won 119 to 118, and in the final matchup, the Nets won 101 to 91. So, I mean, the Nets can definitely play scrappy, but I don't think it's much of a difference. I say a sweep, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to 5. So that's our series preview so far for the NBA. We will keep everybody posted. As I stated, the next time we record, which is on Thursday, today's Tuesday, the next time we'll record, we'll have probably as clear of a playoff picture as we'll have. The only one that won't be clear is who the Lakers will play in the West, because there'll be that play-in tournament. But we'll have everybody else set up. Right now, it's tentatively looking like we're going to get Mavs versus Clippers, Jazz versus Nuggets, and then I believe Thunder Rockets is the other matchup. And then in the East, it's a lot more solidified, but there is still some room for movement, and we'll wait until that stuff is locked in. So let's move on to our main caveat today, and that is the what's list I missed? Oh, what's list? Duh. There's one thing, an episode I miss. So
it's usually the what's list.
It's something like that. It's the what's list, or it's a let's rank them, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our what's list. I got to pick the topic this time, and my topic was to give me the top 10 hardest places to play in college football. You could do all time. You could do the last 10 years. You could do the last 5 years. You could do specific ones, Iowa at night. You could do whatever combination you want. Just make it justifiable. So I picked the topic, which means I believe Mitch goes first.
Yep. All right. So for my stadiums, I chose to do currently. So hopefully, as you look at my list, it reflects that. So for honorable mention, I had to give some props to Camp Randall, even though that's kind of a homer pick. They do play pretty well at home, and even though they don't win all the time, it's going to be a fight. You're not going to get a blowout, so they get a little bit of credit. But onto the top 10. So at number 10, I've got Autzen Stadium, which hosts Oregon. 9, I got the Swamp, Florida. 8, Beaver Stadium during a whiteout, Penn State. 7, Bryant-Denny Stadium, Bama. 6, Death Valley, LSU. 5, Notre Dame Stadium, Notre Dame. 4, Legion Field, UAB. 3, The Shoe, Ohio State. 2, Spectrum Stadium, UCF. And then number 1, Memorial Stadium, Clemson.
Clemson number 1, huh?
Would you like my reasoning?
Yeah.
No, it's a pretty solid list. You didn't have Bama on that list, though, did you?
Yeah, dude, they're at 7.
Okay, because I
7?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, up until recently, they weren't losing games at home, and then they've dropped a couple.
Like who? They lost to LSU this year. Who else?
1 sec. Give me a second. I feel like they've lost another one in the last couple of years, in at least the last 2 years.
I don't think they've lost to Auburn at home in a while. They've lost a few times in Auburn, but I don't believe they've lost at home.
Let me look it up. Okay, because Alabama lost.
So anyway, while he looks that up, Mitch.
Yeah. So basically, Clemson had to be the number 1 just because they have a 22-game winning streak at home, and it's the longest active one. So by default, that makes it the hardest place to play because they don't lose.
Fair. I mean, I think when you go against like streaks like that, and I do a little bit of a similar thing with my list, I think the issue is that you don't take into consideration conference. Like, we all agree the ACC is an absolute cakewalk, and it's not like Clemson has scheduled really tough teams at home with the exception of like the occasional matchup against Notre Dame. But then again, they also have quality home wins, like against Louisville when Lamar Jackson was there, against Notre Dame. So I can agree with it. I don't have them at 1. I have them at 2. But I can understand it. I think the list is solid. I don't know about Autzen. I would put Camp Randall ahead of Autzen, again, because I think the Pac-12 is a little bit more of a cakewalk. And I don't think Oregon plays as many ranked teams in Autzen as Wisconsin plays in Wisconsin. I mean, we had just last season, We had Michigan and Michigan State at home. And granted, both of them didn't amount to much, but they were top 10 teams, I think, when we played them.
Yeah.
We've had Ohio State at home the last couple of years. We had Michigan at home 2 years before that. We've had, we were playing, I guess technically you could call LSU a home game, but it was actually Randall, or at Lambeau. So I think you could – I understand it. I personally would probably put Autzen over Camp Randall or put Camp Randall over Autzen, and I think that it's justifiable with that. But I think you're
fair enough.
Solid.
I looked it up. You were actually right. The last team before LSU that Bama lost to at home was Ole Miss in 2015.
That's what I thought. It'd been a hot minute. So
they either lose to Auburn at Auburn, or they lose to Clemson in the finals. That's who they've lost to in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and they lost to Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M twice. One of them was at Texas A&M. One of them was at Bama. But Bama just doesn't lose home games, So no, I respect the list. I think it's pretty solid. Skylar, your list.
Okay, this is the hardest list I've had to put together ever.
Thank you.
Hardest list because I was looking up like win percentages at home, records at home, things like that. Because I wasn't trying to limit myself to like recent because I wanted to look more into it.
Yeah.
And then it just spiraled into this uncontrollable mess. So I have 10 teams. I have a good set of where I think they belong due to like how I was rating it, which is win percentage at home.
Sure.
But these numbers
now I have a question on that. So is that win percentage at home like any campus or like any stadium?
No, I was specifically trying just being like at the stadium. How hard is it to win at that stadium?
At that stadium. Okay.
Because it's all time then?
This is no. Because from what I saw, they weren't keeping track of it all time.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how you don't, because you can just look through the schedule and mark it up. This list literally pissed me off so much.
You're welcome.
From what I gauged and the math I did is like the late 90s or mid 90s because some of the teams always play like a neutral site game, so they would have like 5 or 7 home games.
Basically the modern era.
Basically.
Okay.
Okay. You guys can tear me apart on this one. I don't care because this is literally just like win percentage at home that I was able to kind of figure out.
As long as there's a rationale for it, I'm not going to tear into you. Now, if you go Yale is number 1 because from 1911 to 1965 they never lost a home game.
No, if they
then I'd be like, all right, you're kind of an asshole.
I made specific that if they didn't win, if they hadn't played more than like 150 games at home, because there was like Appalachian State and like UAB and teams on that, whereas like they had like 50 or 60 wins at home, but and only like 3 losses. I'm like, no, I'm scrapping that because I don't want that right now. I want definitive. So all of these teams have won at least 130 games at home.
That's fair.
Okay,
all right,
so
let's hear it.
So honorable mention, I just have to throw it out there. Nebraska, we're not where we used to be. I will give you that. We're not nearly where we used to be. But having 360 consecutive sellouts, always having fans in the stands. I as a Nebraska fan, that is something that I am proud of. That is something that I'm glad that with us canceling the football season, we could still have because that was in jeopardy. So I'm still happy about that. But yeah, so I have to throw that as an honorable mention and just saying, since I'm going to say the mid-90s, Nebraska has won 77.8% of the games at home. That has dropped off very much in the last 4 years, where it's getting closer to like 60% of the games at home we're winning, which is not where it should be. But again, not bad. Okay. At 10, I put Penn State. 77.5% of the games they went at home. I also added them because the whiteout is just one of the hardest environments to play in college football. I thought that just needed to be said because it is. How many times has Ohio State got in during the whiteout and either lost or barely won? At number 9, I have Clemson. 78% of their games at home. Also kind of a recency bias. I moved them up just a little bit because, again, like we said, they've had the longest continuous streak at home. And it's hard to beat them. They're becoming almost the new Death Valley, which I really like. Whereas number 8, Florida State, almost 80% of the wins at home. in the last 25-ish years. It looks like, and again, that's a really like heavy late 90s, early 2000s bias because they were really good at that time. Again, they've dipped since then. I think just this last season they had a winning record at home. But again, this is trying to do as best as I could at all time. 7, Wisconsin. Camp Randall, 80.7% of your games at home you guys are winning, which is insane. I've been to Camp Randall. That is a tough place to play at. Nebraska's played you tough there a couple times. We've also lost horribly there a couple times. But no, it's a fun environment. People are nice. You guys are loud. As a Nebraska fan, I appreciate other crazy Midwestern rednecks with wearing red going crazy for their football team. I appreciate it. On
You're
Wisconsin. Number 6, Florida. 81.7% of their games they're winning at home. Again, not like recently it's gotten better, but there was a stretch there where they weren't the best at home. Number 5, LSU, Death Valley. I like having the visiting team having to walk past a tiger. I think says enough about it. One of my favorite things in the 2014 NCAA game was the tiger going rawr at the opposing teams as they were running out. It was enough to play LSU, just to be LSU in the dynasty, just to see that every home game. But again, it's Death Valley. It's a hard game to play at, especially at night. I wouldn't want to play there. I think at one time they threw a touchdown or a touchdown or something happened, and the cheering was so loud that it registered on the Richter scale. Like that's how loud that stadium can get. Number 4, Oregon. Even with Oregon being shit the last couple of years, they've won a lot of their games at home. It's hard to beat Oregon at Austin Stadium. I think the one season they went 4-8. 3 of their 4 wins happened at home. So it's hard to beat Oregon at home. So there's that. Number 3, Oklahoma, 86.1% of their games they're winning at home, which is crazy. As a Nebraska fan, I know how hard it is to go into Norman, Oklahoma and win a game there. It's insane. They've continuously been good. There hasn't really been a steep drop-off. Again, Oklahoma fans are great. I've never been to Norman. I'd love to. It's one of the like all-time stadiums. As a Nebraska fan, as a football fan, you just got to visit. Number 2, Boise State. 86.8% of the games they've won there. Nobody wants to play on the blue turf where they're blending in and they can't see where the fucking players are coming at. I've never really bought that logic, but you know what? Something about that blue turf just makes it easier for Boise State to win. And also, I just love watching Boise State play. They have been the Cinderella team for some reason throughout college football for the last 20 years, even though they've proven time and time again that they need to be taken seriously, and they're not, which is, I think, just a detriment to the rest of college football. And then number 1, Ohio State. The Shoe is a horrible place to play in. They're winning 90% of their games they have there. Almost 150 wins. They've lost 18 times at home in the last 25 years-ish, which is insane because that's a season and a half worth of games that they've lost at home in the span of so many years. Even when they were bad, they were still winning at home because the Shoe is just massive. 100,000 screaming Ohio State fans. That sounds like my worst nightmare. But no, I don't know how Alabama didn't get on this list, honestly. But they're also another honorable mention because Bear Bryant Stadium, again, is just like a mecca of college football, and people need to go visit it. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, post Bear Bryant, pre Nick Saban, there were a lot of really lean years there for Alabama. So I'm not surprised with that. No, I mean, I think the list is solid. Boise State, again, I think Boise State almost kind of goes in my line a little bit to like the same logic I had with Mitch and Autzen Stadium, in that the Mountain West isn't a powerhouse conference, but Boise State is the powerhouse of that conference. So, I mean, that's props to Boise State. That's not a knock on Boise State. That's more a knock on the rest of the Mountain West. But no, I mean, all in all, I think the list is solid. I think you got solid logic on there. Mitch, thoughts?
Yeah, I liked your list. It was fine. I was really confused with your honorable mention for Nebraska because you just brought up like ticket sales and that, but you brought up the winning percentage, so that was like, okay, that makes sense. Then I'm fine with it. So,
well, yeah, if we were just doing like before 2001, Nebraska would probably be at the top of the list. But yeah, it's been a lean couple of years
for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. So I did my list in a completely different way. I did conference record the last 10 years.
Oh, that's
So in doing this, I know that there's a lot of games where teams will schedule powerhouse opponents outside of conference. And we talked about it, right? Ohio State was supposed to go out to play Oregon this year. Wisconsin, Alabama was supposed to have a series. Wisconsin, Notre Dame was supposed to have a series. Like, you get a lot of those. But to me, so many of those games are played on neutral sites, and they're not – I don't think they're indicative of a team's actual ability to play at home. So my list goes a little bit different. I don't have any honorable mentions because fuck that. Number 10 on my list, I have Michigan, the Big House. In the last 10 years, they are 57-13 at home in conference play. The reason they're not higher on this list, Appalachian State. Sorry. As well as an inability to beat Ohio State at home. I can forgive on the road. At home, they just get slaughtered.
Well, the last time they beat Ohio State was 2015, and that was at home, right?
That was at home, yeah. So it just shows you. And before then, they had lost, I think, 8 matchups straight before then. So it's been a hot minute. Number 9 goes to Beaver Stadium, Penn State. I'm not going to do during a whiteout because in the 16 games during a whiteout, Penn State only has a record of 8-8 during those games. Now, granted, of the 8 losses, only 1 against Iowa came against a team that was ranked less than 15th in the country. But Penn State I still put on the list, 62-15 record at home. Number 8, I have Notre Dame. Even though Notre Dame doesn't play conference, 51-13 at home. I have them a little bit higher because Notre Dame does schedule really difficult teams at home, such as Georgia, such as Clemson, stuff like that.
Shout Jesus.
Number 7 on my list, I have Georgia, Sanford Stadium, 56-9 in the last 10 years. Very competitive place to play. Number 6 on my list, Camp Randall, Wisconsin, 61-8 record at home in the last 10 years. And of those 8 losses, 5 of them came against teams ranked top 10 or higher. Of those 5, 4 of them came against Ohio State. So
I was about to say.
is what it is. And then number 5 on my list, I have LSU, Tiger Stadium, 61-8. Same record as Wisconsin at home, but the SEC is a little bit more difficult to play. Some lean years with Les Miles in terms of ability to be a top 5 ranked team, but still played really competitive at home. Number 4 on my list goes to Oklahoma, Gaylord Family Stadium, 58-11 in the last 10 years. Not the most wins by any means, but Oklahoma is just a really difficult place to play until Iowa State did it a couple years ago. They hadn't beaten them in, I think, 30 years. Number 3 on my list does go to Alabama, 65-5 in the last 10 years at home in conference. Number 2 goes to Clemson, 64-5 at home in conference. And number 1 goes to Ohio State, 67-5 in the last 10 years at home in conference. They're absolutely dominant. I've seen teams such as Wisconsin and Michigan State and Penn State and Nebraska and everybody walk into the shoe with a solid fighting chance to win a game and just be absolutely annihilated. So that's my list.
Yeah, I like it. I have no qualms with any of your picks. I think you did a really great job with your list.
No, I agree. I think you I feel like you picked this list because you were prepared of what you were going to do with all of this. Whereas like I was scrambling, but no, I like you. It's unique and I appreciate it because it's a good list. And I have to agree. Ohio State is probably the toughest place to play in the entire fucking country, and I hope that ends soon.
Yeah, they there was a couple of different stuff I saw across where there was even like a coach's poll as most difficult place to play, and Clemson and Ohio State were I think tied for number 1. Wisconsin was like 4th or 5th.
Wisconsin's a tough place to play at. Like I'll say, like being at Camp Randall, it was hard to hear like myself think at times. So I mean.
Yeah, I think Jump Around has registered on a 3.6 on a Richter scale, which that's fun. I fucking love Jump Around. I wish Nebraska had something like that, but I mean we have our own traditions that I absolutely
you got the balloon.
Yeah,
the balloons. We love the balloons.
That
doesn't kill the earth.
The funniest thing was the game me and Mitch went to where you scored a touchdown, but there was a flag and it got called back. And when the flag happened, like half the stadium let their balloons go too early. I think you scored like 2 plays later, but half the stadium let their balloons go early, and that was great. A list I'd like to do in the future is like top 10 college football traditions because I think that those themselves are awesome. And whether they're trophy games or Jump Around or Mike the Tiger or Touchdown Jesus, whatever it is, things that make stadiums unique because that's what I've always loved about college football is the uniqueness of it.
Yeah, there's still
watching Wisconsin play for the Axe. I love watching Texas, Oklahoma play for the Big Bronze Hat. I love all of it, and I think that that's an interesting topic as well.
It makes me miss college football like games, like not like actual games, but like NCAA 14, where it's
Yeah.
you could get kind of a taste of that with the rivalry. Because I don't know about you guys, but like very rarely did I go in and play as Nebraska because I knew what Nebraska could do. I knew what the roster looked like. I was like, I wanted to play as somebody else. I wanted to play as like Cal or Penn State or somebody to just like be able to breathe in those other kinds of traditions. I think like that's kind of an underrated part of that game.
I would always start, like, for the longest time, I'd start as, like, the Wisconsin offensive coordinator and then take the first head coaching job I got offered,
Yeah.
like, wherever. So, like, I'm like, one year I was at Tulane, and technically Tulane and LSU play for a trophy game. And so, like, every year I scheduled LSU to play for that trophy. And, like, I would just find the most – because they had that list of, like, the trophies you could win, and I wanted all of them. I don't think I ever got all of them. But I wanted all of them. So, no, I missed that game, too. I loved the thing where it said if we're not going to get college football, then EA Sports should be obligated to at least come out with an NCAA 21.
For sure.
My favorite was always OC or DC for UAB, and then work my way up, and then try to –
UAB, yeah.
Yeah.
That game was fun, man. I missed that game.
For sure.
All right. So now that we got that list done, who picks the next list? Mitch?
I do.
Yeah.
All right. What are we doing on the next list?
Yeah, so we're going to keep up the college football theme, especially since, some of us won't be getting to see our teams. For next episode, we will be doing the top 5 greatest college football rivalries.
Okay.
Do they have to be, like, currently playing, or can they just be, like, all-time?
No, we can do all time. So if you want to do,
All right.
like, Catholics versus convicts or something like that, I'm
Yeah.
for it. It's just got to be great.
Is this just we can justify top 5 anyway, or is it like, like Wisconsin and Minnesota have played a bunch, and I think the series is like 61 wins Wisconsin, 59 Minnesota, or is it just our own rationale?
No, it's basically your own rationale why you think it's a great rivalry and it's fun and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, all right, I can dig it. I've already got.
I have like 3 in my head.
I have 5 in my head, but I know I'm going to have to look up more. And I think I might want to throw in just a random one too, just to mess with people.
One.
Yeah, I'm gonna go like St. John's versus St. Thomas, like the D3 one where they always sell out like Twin Stadium in Minneapolis, or
That's a good one.
I'll go with like
I'll
go with like the University of Chicago versus Michigan back in 1910. I'll just go some super random pick.
I'm gonna call Bill Belichick and they'll tell me all of them.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, who did Rutgers play in 1896?
Oh, that was a great game. I love sitting there watching that.
I was but a wee lad at the age of 68 and watching that game.
And Nike was yet a pup.
Me and brand new freshman Hunter Renfro were sitting there watching it.
After the nuclear holocaust, only 2 will survive. Bill Belichick and Hunter Renfro.
Destined to be together, but forever to be apart. So let's move on here to our main entree here for the second time, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers obviously had a disappointing season last year. A lot of people, including myself, were curious to see how they would look sans Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. Overall, this team did finish 8-8. They did lose Big Ben in week 2. They finished 8-6 as a record without him. Mason Rudolph, who was the starting quarterback for 10 games, finished, Duck Hodges also played a few, but we don't talk about him because he was just terrible.
He was a piece of shit.
Mason Rudolph's 1,765 yards, 13 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. James Conner had a really disappointing season. Now, he did only play in 10 games, so take it with a grain of salt, but 464 rushing yards, 4 yards per carry, 4 rushing touchdowns, 251 receiving yards on 34 catches and 3 touchdowns. And again, Juju Smith-Schuster had a rough season. I'm going to attribute it more to the really porous quarterback play in general, but 42 receptions, 552 yards, 3 touchdowns. What do you guys think, boys? Just definitely a disappointing season from Pittsburgh, but was it more due to the Roethlisberger injury or to the losses of Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown?
I think it's got to be both. Just how poor the offense got after, those big 3 losses. I mean, you got Big Ben, who's a for sure Hall of Famer, won you, Super Bowls, and he's gone. So you got to have Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges as your quarterback. And then you lose, one of the better wide receivers and running backs from your offense. And you got to go with James Conner, who's been, pretty solid, but he's no all-pro. And then Juju Smith-Schuster by himself and Deontay Johnson, who's coming into his own, but nothing really else at the wide receiver or tight end position, and an aging Steelers offensive line. So with all that together, I think it's the Steelers offense that's just crumbling right now and definitely needs a retool that held them back, because it definitely wasn't the defense or their head coach, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, as much as I don't want to like the Steelers at points, I don't want to like Mike Tomlin. I mean, there's a grittiness to him and like a bluntness to him that I can respect at least. I think it's just the fact that this offense doesn't know what they're doing anymore, honestly. I could attribute it to Big Ben, but even if Big Ben's in the game, I'm not sold on this offense. Like, not even comfortably sold on this offense, because again, granted, best defense in the NFL going up against them, but Big Ben couldn't do anything against New England in the one game he played. Again, granted, week one you get a lot of misconceptions about how the season's going to go. If everything went week one, I mean, fuck it, Cincinnati should have been 8-8 the way they played against Seattle.
Yeah, but he's always struggled against you guys.
I mean, granted, but again, it's and then injuring his throwing arm in a non-contact injury. But it's like that doesn't excuse like James Conner not producing the way that he was, because the offensive line is so similar. But again, like I agree with Mitch. That offensive line is getting old, and it took a step back last year. The defense is great. Mike Tomlin's a great defensive coach. I'm interested to see what they do with this offense, though.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little pushback on it. I think that it was much more Ben Roethlisberger being hurt than the losses of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, because we saw what James Conner could do the season before. Now, granted, he definitely took a step back, but people don't really understand how much a quarterback does even for the run game itself. And when you have such a young group of guys like James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, James Washington, just to name a few as your receiving core, not having the veteran presence of Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown definitely hurts. But Rudolph started 10 games at quarterback. The dude barely averaged 175 passing yards a game. Barely. Frankly, I looked at Juju Smith-Schuster's stats, 42 receptions, comes out to just over 2.5 catches a game. And I was like, wow, he even had that many? Because this team didn't have anything together at all. And I think a large portion of that does go to Ben Roethlisberger being hurt. None of us were sold on Mason Rudolph. We'd had several conversations about it, even when the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted him. We went, if he's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, it's going to take him 3 or 4 years to develop. And for him to be thrown in there, and then halfway through him being thrown in, not only does he get injured, but he also gets benched for Duck Hodges. That does nothing for the confidence of a quarterback.
Not to mention, with the helmet.
Yeah, I was going to say, not to mention dropping his helmet and Myles Garrett being so kind to put it back on his head. But it does nothing. I think Mike Tomlin has the stuff together. I think the Steelers as an organization have it together. I don't think the offensive line took a step back. I think that because you had such an inexperienced quarterback, the offensive line just didn't necessarily know how to react. And I think it's a similar thing. Like, as Packer fans, we watched it with guys like Brett Hundley and Scott Tolzien and Matt Flynn when Rodgers got hurt, where the offensive line, people said, well, the offensive line started playing bad. No, it's that the quarterback isn't making the correct checks. The quarterback isn't helping the offensive line. Remember, feasibly, you should get 3 seconds to throw the ball. And if the quarterback is holding it for a lot longer, like Mason Rudolph did, like Brett Hundley did, like a lot of quarterbacks who are forced in that situation do, your offensive line can only hold a guy for so long until they get called for holding or give up a sack. And I think that's the issue with the Steelers. So
I need you to take that back, sir.
Don't
you dare compare Matt Flynn to fucking Brett Hundley. All right.
Okay. All right.
Matt Flynn was a godsend as a backpack for us.
I will say that Matt Flynn, the Matt Flynn Packer versus Patriots game is still one of my favorite games to go back. We'll go back and watch, because it's just like, what the fuck is happening? And the big man almost returning the kickoff for a touchdown. It's just it's just a great game to watch.
But even then, week 17 of the 2011 season, when Flynn broke the Packers record for 6 touchdowns in a game against Detroit, that was a great game too because Detroit was, I believe, fighting for a playoff spot that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the few years they were good.
and man, that was an awesome game. Like Matt Flynn was definitely he's
Yeah, so
one of those.
don't you dare.
No, okay, now hold on because remember he didn't do anything anywhere else, but Matt Flynn is always going to be one of those benchmarks in football history, like Matt Castle was, and a few other guys. Where you're
But
just,
yeah, he had to
where
compete
you're
against
just gonna
Russell Wilson in Seattle.
Nick Foles, can we bring up Nick Foles winning
Nick
a Super Bowl
like,
as a backup?
There's always going to be a couple of guys like that you look at and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot about him, and it's always like that. I mean, even Jeff Hofstetter, who won a Super Bowl for the Giants back in the '80s, right? Backup quarterback, Phil Simms got hurt. Like, there's always footnotes like that. But I think you understood my point. So let's move into free agent losses and free agent pickups. Honestly, not
nothing.
What.
It was like they lost like 2 players.
Yeah, no, it was nothing. Like
the audacity.
The losses were really not
Nothing.
much. The pickups were really not much. Losses, we talked about in the last episode with Philadelphia, Javon Hargrave, defensive tackle. They lost a tight end they traded for, Nick Vannett from Seattle. He ended up going to Denver. And B.J. Finney, who was a backup center, went to Seattle. And free agent pickups, the ones of note, Eric Ebron, tight end from Indianapolis, who only had 3 touchdowns last year, but had 13 touchdowns the year before with Andrew Luck at quarterback. Chris Wormley, defensive end from Baltimore, and Derek Watt, fullback from the Chargers. Only reason that's really of note, A, I think it points in the right direction, but B, we got Derek Watt with TJ Watt, and it's only a matter of time until JJ comes and joins them. So what kind of stands out in losses and pickups, if anything, because, again, it's so minimal?
I wouldn't say that. I definitely think the biggest loss or the 2 biggest losses for the Steelers has to be Javon Hargrave, just because he was such a big integral part for that defensive line.
Actually.
And yeah, exactly.
Physically big.
And the other one has to be the retirement of Ramon Foster. That guy's been, one of their better offensive linemen, and to lose him, I think we're going to see, a little bit of a downgrade in the offensive line overall. But yeah, the rest were mainly backups and pretty much busts who didn't really work out. So besides those 2, they did pretty good with their losses. Their games, I think they're really interesting. You got to start with Eric Ebron. In Detroit, he was nothing. And then he goes to the Colts and has a really fantastic year, and you get to see the potential. So if the Steelers are able to get that from, Eric Ebron this year, they could be very dangerous. Derek Watt, I think he'll help with the run game and all that kind of stuff. Gotta love me those Badgers fullbacks. They're always awesome. And yeah, that's what I have for losses and gains.
Yeah, see, again, like, I'm not – like, nothing – I looked at this free agency, it's kind of like, okay, Eric Ebron, I know that name. And I was like, oh, Javon Hargrave, we talked about him last week. So, like, those were the only 2 that really stuck out to me. And, like, yes, Eric Ebron has the potential to be really good. But the only year he did really good, in my opinion, was – he had a good year 2016, but, like, the 2018 year with Andrew Luck throwing him the ball, he did amazing. But other than that, kind of flashes in the pan of some potential there. And I don't know. Again, it's a part of the offense that I'm not sold on. Because it's just – I get it. They need help at the tight end. They need help in some kind of explosive playmaker, and Eric Ebron can definitely be that. But it's a wait and see with this offense, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, for the losses, like, we hit it really hard even on the Philadelphia episode. Javon Hargrave is definitely going to hurt, but the Steelers, they just have this amazing ability in a similar sense to, like, New England, where they just seem to pull guys right out of their ass and plug them in, and they do pretty well. Like, obviously New England has an advantage on that, but a lot of these guys end up doing really well. They get 4th, 5th, 6th round draft picks to produce pretty okay. With their pickups, even though they're minimal, I actually love all 3 of them. Eric Ebron, I can forgive for his production going down because Jacoby Brissett wasn't solid last year. He was okay, but he wasn't solid. He had half as many catches, half as many yards. Andrew Luck is definitely the best quarterback he's played with. No hate on Matt Stafford, but that Lions offense was not good. And I think now that he's going to get the opportunity to play, hopefully with Ben Roethlisberger, depending on if he gets injured again, I think you'll see his numbers go up. And I think that him being able to attack that seam route, where we've all agreed the other two teams in the AFC North, the Browns and the Bengals, have issues at the linebacker position. And that's where the Steelers are going to feast. And if we look at a lot of teams in the AFC that they have to play, in even their schedule, there's moments there where Ebron could really be a game changer, and he can open things up for Smith-Schuster and Deontay Johnson and James Washington, and even James Conner coming out of the backfield. So I do like that. The pick that I love is I actually love the Chris Wormley pick. He got so forgotten in Baltimore, and a large part of it was because statistically it wasn't there. 33 tackles, 1.5 sacks the whole season. He's a solid defensive end. I think he's going to go really well with Bud Dupree. Now, keeping in mind with Bud Dupree right now, he is suing the Steelers in order to be classified as a defensive end instead of an outside linebacker due to a franchise tag so that he can get more money. But there's no indication that he's going to sit out. I think Wormley adds another depth. And then with Derek Watt, sure, statistically he might not be great, but he offers you weapons, a backfield weapon like that. He can block really well. And I think that him playing fullback will help with maybe some issues on the offensive line. We see it, the teams that are really successful at running the ball and have the opportunity to open up the play action, which is what I think the Steelers are going to try to go back to, all have fullbacks who can catch, run, and block really well. And I think Watt fits into that really nicely. But it's not flash in the plan. It's not a bright free agency like maybe Miami had.
Yeah.
It's a lot of guys where you go, okay, this could work, but nobody who's of major note, you know. So let's move on to their draft. The Steelers only had 6 picks in this last draft. They had a second, a third, 2 fourths, a sixth, and a seventh. So with a second-round pick 49 overall, they went Chase Claypool, wide receiver from Notre Dame. Third round, 102, they went Alex Highsmith, edge rusher from the University of Charlotte, the only real 49ers. Fourth round pick, 124, they went Anthony McFarland Jr., halfback from Maryland. Other fourth-round pick, 135, they went Kevin Dotson, guard from Louisiana Lafayette. Sixth round, 198, they went Antoine Brook Jr., safety from Maryland. And seventh-round pick, 232, Carlos Davis, defensive lineman from Nebraska. So how do you guys grade their draft for 2020?
I'm going to say like D+, C-. I'm not really in love with this draft. There's a couple guys that kind of stand out. Obviously, you got to start with Chase Claypool. You know, there's a lot of talk of like him going to tight end just because of his size and all that. But he definitely adds a weapon to an offense that desperately needs one and depth for it. And then the other two that I'm interested to see how they pan out is Alex Highsmith. You know, because he's an edge rusher and the Steelers have needed one for like years. And even though they have Watt and Dupree might be leaving soon, so you're going to have that hole. So maybe he could be your like long-term kind of like plan for it. And then I think Antoine Brooks Jr. could be a really good depth piece for the Steelers secondary.
I'm kind of in the same mood as Mitch here. I'm going to give it a C because I'm just a little bit more forgiving because I think some of these players have the potential to be really good. I just don't like in some of the ways that they went. I think that like we looked at their last year, like their offense was just bad. Specifically, like whether or not their offensive line took a step back, it's definitely aging. And I think they needed to address some depth positions of the offensive line. I mean, granted, they picked one person up. But I think that because their defense is solid, and they added a defensive lineman, never mind, back off. Lost defensive lineman that, like, I get why they would add 2 in the draft. But again, I think like the offensive line is a little bit more of a concern at this point because if it is aging, it does take a step back, then that grants injury to Ben Roethlisberger. But again, like I like Chase Claypool. I think that he has the potential to again be something that this offense desperately needs, which is some dynamic player. He did some pretty cool things at Notre Dame. My dad being a Notre Dame fan, I've watched Notre Dame's a fun team to watch. He was a big part of that. I agree with Alex Highsmith. He is the real 49er. Antoine Brooks Jr., I think, again, adds a solid piece. Carlos Davis, I'm just as a Nebraska fan, he's a quick dude, quick off his feet. He definitely needs help with some technique areas. He was playing out of position at Nebraska. So moving into the Steelers, I'm excited to see what Coughlin does with him. Or not Coughlin, Tomlin does with him, because he works with, I mean, they've had some pretty successful defensive linemen in Pittsburgh, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the natural athleticism that is one of the Davis twins, because those guys they're athletes. They did track and field throughout high school and were Big Ten champion shot put throwers. So like these guys know how to use leverage. So I'm excited to see what he does with him. Again, I'll say Carlos Davis's stats don't really jump off the table at Nebraska, but he's a hard worker. I know that for a fact. He stayed with Nebraska through he was recruited by Bo Pelini, played under Mike Riley, and graduated with Scott Frost. So the guy's committed. But like I'll give it a C, because I think that they needed to address a little bit more at that offensive line instead of the defensive edge rusher.
Yeah, so I give their draft a B-, and I do it because there's only one pick that I don't really understand, and that's the Anthony McFarland Jr. pick. He was okay at Maryland, but their depth at halfback is strong. I mean, with Connor and Benny Snell Jr., I felt like they were already really strong at halfback, and I don't think they needed another one. To kind of address your guys' points with the offensive line, because when I was going through this, I thought the same thing. What you have to remember is no first-round pick, because they traded that for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And by the time they got to their position in the second round, the only really strong offensive linemen were pretty much tackles. Guards weren't – no guards you could really plug in. And they're already strong at tackle with guys like DeCastro and Villanueva. So I understand them instead going with Chase Claypool. I think Chase Claypool is a great pick. 66 catches, 1,037 yards, 13 touchdowns. Love it. I think he can really fit in well. I think he can take that longer receiver position that the Steelers need. The Highsmith pick, I love the Alex Highsmith pick. I love this kid. Watched him in a bunch of games. He's great. 15 sacks last year, 75 tackles. He was great. Hopefully he can develop. McFarland, again, I don't understand. Kevin Dotson, guard out of Louisiana Lafayette. I actually really liked this kid's game tape. I did catch a few games. 6'4", 321 pounds. I like him because he can really plug into either guard position or center if needs be. And I think that when you do have an aging offensive line, and we've seen it, teams like New England, teams like Green Bay will do it. They'll draft a guy who can go to guard or tackle or center or guard or whatever it might be. With that, the Antoine Brooks Jr. pick, I love that pick. I feel like they got a steal out of him. If this draft wasn't so safety heavy, I think this kid could have been an early 3. Because he went to Maryland, he did play with Darnell Savage, and I think that he did a pretty good job last year. 87 tackles, an interception, 5 passes, defense on a really bad Maryland defense. I think he was a stud. And Carlos Davis, again, I just think that he can really develop. I give it a B- because all of these guys are developmental. No one's going to produce 10 sacks or 5 touchdowns or whatever it might be next season. But I think these guys can be really great role players for this Steelers team. So now let's get into where we rank this team. So again, quick update.
Yeah, quick sports update. So during the Bucks-Wizards game, Giannis got called for an offensive foul. After that, there's an exchange between Giannis and Mortez Wagner, and Giannis headbutted him and got a flagrant 2 and ejected.
Giannis ain't there for anybody's shit. And fuck Mo Wagner, dude. I hated that kid when he was at Michigan. Besides, it's the Wizard. Who gives a fuck? The Bucks, they're already locked in. They're playing for nothing other than to stay warm.
I just like the headbutt part. That's all.
Yeah, I love that shit. I'm going to be excited to watch that replay. Skylar, you have no audio.
We need Greek versus German shirts. Sorry. I put myself on mute for some reason. I don't know why.
No, you're good. So where do we rank this team? In or in need of a rebuild, in or in need of a reload, 8-8 playoff tier, Super Bowl caliber tier. And I'll even let you guys go more in depth. Rebuild if Ben Roethlisberger's healthy, playoff if he's not, or whatever, vice versa, whatever it might be.
I think I kind of alluded to earlier when we were talking about it. I think that because of the defense and the coaching and hopefully getting back Big Ben, they're definitely a playoff team. But I definitely think they need an offensive retool just because, their weapons are kind of lacking right now. There's only a couple guys you can really count on. Tight end is questionable, even though Ebron has the potential. James Conner is solid, but is he going to produce how he did when he first came in, or are we going to see more of what we saw last year? I just think those are kind of holding it back. And then even though the Steelers do have a solid offensive line, the tackles are pretty good. DeCastro's solid at guard. They're getting up there in age, and there's no doubt about that. So they're going to need to, have depth that they can either, fill in if they get injured just because of, the position they play and their age, or someone to take over. Because this is kind of what the Packers had to do the past couple of years with all our great offensive linemen either leaving or retiring. So, I think they're a playoff team that needs to retool to go higher.
Kind of in the same vein as Mitch, I think that this is a playoff team. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is going to be a hard out. It's going to be hard not to get in the playoffs every year, just being Ben Roethlisberger. But I think that this team is going to take a bit, and they're going to lose games that they shouldn't, due to offense not clicking, due to some of those little things. Because again, him injuring on a non-contact, his arm on a non-contact throw, like just throwing the ball, the non-contact injury, it worries me because Ben Roethlisberger, even though I don't like the guy, his thing is that he's a tank. He's as big as a linebacker, and it takes a lot to get him down. So that's how he extends plays. I mean, we, like Brady, you said with Aaron Rodgers, it was like the offensive line isn't that bad. They're just accustomed to a quarterback that scrambles and moves around like Aaron Rodgers. I think we could say the same thing about like a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger that's able to move around, extend the plays a little bit more. I'm curious to see if he's able to do that this year. He still could, because it was his arm, it wasn't his legs. But still, I'm cautious. I'm cautious about it. But I agree. I think that they need some of these young players, James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner, they need to step up. They need to help carry the load, so it's not just Ben Roethlisberger. And so if he does go down, they don't have to. They can't all be blamed on Duck Hodges or Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I put this team solidly in a playoff tier. I think a part of it, and we've alluded to it, the AFC is Baltimore and Kansas City, and then it's a really toss-up as to seeds 3 through 7. We have an idea as to how teams are going to be, but it's not set in stone. And for me, one of the teams that are set in stone is Pittsburgh. I think their schedule is a lot easier this year. Yeah, the rest of the AFC North is going to be more competitive, but this Pittsburgh team with Ben Roethlisberger can play Baltimore competitive. They should beat Cleveland. I mean, Roethlisberger's thrown more touchdowns in Cleveland than any Cleveland quarterback has. Cincinnati, we all agreed are going to take a step up, but we also all agreed, I think, that they'd get swept by Pittsburgh. This team is a solid playoff tier to me. I agree with you, Mitch, on your point. I think they need a retool in order to be Super Bowl caliber. But I also think that if a retool is going to come, it's going to come once Roethlisberger decides to hang it up. Where you do that retool, where you take a year in order to get that quarterback completely solid before you really hit hard at the skill position players.
Almost like what it looks like the Patriots are doing this year.
Yeah, similar to what the Patriots are doing. Really similar to like what the Colts did with Andrew Luck. Similar to what a lot of teams do along those lines. So let's move on to our season prediction. Again, we would typically break down their whole season, but for time constraints and to get to other sports, we're just going to go with our prediction for them on the season. I have the Pittsburgh Steelers going about 11-5 next year. I think their schedule is pretty easy with the exception of the games against Baltimore. They do play the NFC South, and that's going to be interesting. Their matchups against Tampa and against New Orleans are going to be fantastic. They've also got to play Buffalo again, and that's going to be a matchup of two fantastic defenses. But I think this team is strong enough to win some games that they shouldn't win. They are going to drop a couple of games, no doubt about that. I think they're going to be strong again against the AFC North, going either 5-1 or 4-2, depending on those matchups to Baltimore. But I have them going 11-5, and that's a solid playoff spot for me.
Yeah, I have a similar thought. I have them one game higher, so I have them going 12-4. I think that they're going to split the series with the Ravens, even though their offense doesn't really on the same level with the Ravens' offense. I think their defense is definitely going to keep them in the game and will get them a win. And then I guess one loss that could be kind of like how could they lose? Probably would be the Bills, even though their offense is not there, mainly because of their quarterback. I just think, the defense they kind of had is going to keep them in the game. And I just think that the Bills' weapons in Diggs and Singletary is going to, keep Josh Allen from messing it up for everybody. So that's where I get the upset. So Steelers will go 12-4, and that is good enough. Let's see.
I definitely think that Buffalo game is going to be one of the most interesting games of the season to watch. I mean, they played each other really well last year, and both offenses are almost the same, right? Really good defenses, really questionable offenses. So that game, I also have Pittsburgh losing, just because I think that Buffalo, with the addition of Stephon Diggs, might have an upper hand. But that is a toss-up to me, and it's going to be such an interesting, fun game to watch.
Yeah. Make sure you're done. Are you good?
Yeah, you can go.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
See, I'm a little bit more pessimistic on the season. I have them going 9-7 because there's some games in there where I think it's going to be interesting. I'm specifically thinking about the AFC South teams they have to play, Tennessee and Indy, with some. I mean, those are just interesting teams for them to play. I think that I don't know if they can win both of those games. I don't have them winning both of those games right now, but I have them splitting the series with Cleveland. I have them splitting the series with Baltimore. I have them sweeping Cincy. But it's, having the Eagles and the Cowboys and some of those other teams from the in the NFC, it makes it a little bit harder to look at it and go, well, what can this team do? I still think that they're a playoff team. I have them making the playoffs because they sweep Cincy, honestly, because I think them and Cincy, I have them. Cincy has a little bit more favorable schedule, in my opinion. But they're a 7th seed. I think that they make some people pay because of that. But again, it's just the questions on that offense, whether or not we're going to get the same Roethlisberger, whether or not we're going to see jumps from those young players, James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, whether or not James Conner comes back and does what he can. It leads me up to I can't say whether or not this offense can beat a quality defense, or this offense can compete with like an Indianapolis offense, how we're expecting them to play a little bit more this year, especially late in the season when we think that at least I think Indy will find their groove and have some kind of offense flowing at that point. I still think they're a playoff team. They're much better than a lot of other teams. They just happen to be in one of the toughest divisions in football, in my opinion, with in the AFC North. But yeah, I think they're a good team, but there's just too many questions on that offensive side.
Yeah, definitely, and I apologize. I was looking at the schedule wrong with Pittsburgh and who they play from the NFC this year. They play the NFC East, not the NFC South. I was looking at a different schedule. But even then, I still think that they play the NFC East really well. I have them beating Dallas. I think it's their first loss for Dallas was against Pittsburgh, I believe, on my schedule. The Eagles, again, I just have questions. I feel like this defense, kind of similar to like the Bears a couple of years ago, good enough to win this team like 8 games. It's can the offense pick up 2 or 3 more in order to help out? Because this defense is fantastic. Minka Fitzpatrick was great. The corner position is still anchored by Joe Hayden. They've got good linebackers. They've got a good pass rush. Defensive line obviously has some questions, but I think it's there. So yeah, I mean, we're all in agreement. Steelers should feasibly make the playoffs, but I think we all also agree that it's very contingent on Ben Roethlisberger playing. We won't even say the whole season. Let's say Ben Roethlisberger plays at least 13 games. I feel like this team is probably still good enough to make the playoffs.
He needs to play 13, and he needs to play well.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. And it's if he does get hurt, is he going to get hurt against Baltimore? Is he going to get hurt against Cleveland? Or is he going to get hurt in a game that they should win, like against Cincinnati or something like that? Those are the questions. But I feel like the Steelers team, and I've said it a bunch, especially with their schedule, if they go 4-2 or better in division, this team is solid playoff tier to me. But it's how they're going to play in division. And again, Roethlisberger always plays well against Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, especially at home. So that's going to be the interesting thing. But I feel like if they can split the series with the Ravens, even if they win in Pittsburgh, this is a solid playoff tier team.
Well, and what they even said is that the last couple of years, Baltimore and Pittsburgh hasn't been a split series. It's been one team sweeps the other.
Yeah.
And whoever sweeps the other ultimately usually wins the AFC North.
Yeah.
So these games are going to be close. The only reason I have it going split is, again, I can trust Roethlisberger to beat the Baltimore team once, but I don't know if I can have them beating them twice. It's more, in my opinion, much more likely that Baltimore sweeps Pittsburgh than it is Pittsburgh sweeps Baltimore.
Oh yeah,
just
absolutely.
because of that, because of the questions on the offensive side and whether or not and Baltimore's just improved.
Yeah, absolutely. No, agree. So to begin to wrap up the episode here, we have our hero of the episode as well as we have our What Up Putts segment. So for hero of the episode, we are going to break down a team, a fan, a moment that just stood out, that was cool, that we thought. My hero goes to the lady who brought the GOAT onto the NBA fan bubble. I just think that it's so funny. She brought a life GOAT on. Fans have done weird things. I know the Bulls mascot showed up. You know, Giannis's baby was on there. There's a couple of guys. But, man, the lady who brought the GOAT is the funniest thing that I've seen in my life. So whoever that was, I thank you because that was absolutely fantastic.
All right, my hero goes to the Atlanta Braves organist. On the 7th, he played Beat It for Reese McGuire as his walk-up. And why that is funny is because McGuire was busted for public masturbation earlier that year, or this year. Yep. So the organist is my hero.
That guy might win like hero of the whole season.
He might win the year. He might win the year.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
That's pretty good. My hero was gonna be the Big Ten, but now I want to say that guy.
You can, if you want to, you can say that guy, and I won't have an issue with it.
He'll be my co-hero. He'll be my co-hero just because that's fucking great. No, I'm in all seriousness, I'm gonna say the Big Ten and the Pac-12 for, you know what, players. I will side with you 99.9% of the time. In this one instance, you needed to back off, and I appreciate the Big Ten and Pac-12 for being like, guys, you need to back off because this is bigger than football. So, yeah, Big Ten, Pac-12, way to have a set of cojones, making a tough decision. Hopefully football in the spring. Rose Bowl in July. Let's go.
God, I can't imagine Southern California in July.
Ohio State versus Cal. I'm calling it now. Ohio State versus Cal. Let's go.
No, not Cal. I'd say
Cal.
I would say let's go out of nowhere pick. We're gonna go with
Arizona State
Minnesota versus Arizona State is the who knows.
That would be a good one. That'd be a fun one. Arizona State versus Purdue. Minnesota is what you said.
Minnesota, yeah. So now let's move on to our What a Putts. What a Putts is the exact opposite of the hero. This is a team, a fan, an organization, a moment, a player who did something ridiculously stupid that has to be called out on it for being What a Putts. My What a Putts goes to the one, the only, Mr. Darius Geis, former first-round pick for the Washington football team. If you had not followed, Washington did cut Darius Geis after he had been arrested on multiple domestic violence charges, including strangulation, assault and battery, and destruction of property. This is a guy who I really rooted for. You know, he had tough knee injuries at LSU, and then when he got into the league, he had tough knee injuries as well. And it's a shame because he's a great player. But this is absolutely unexcusable. And if the NFL wants to change their mantra on this, Darius Geis should be put on the commissioner's list to where he cannot play. No team should be able to pick him up. It's disgusting what he did. You can always look into it more. But Darius Geis gets my What a Putts because he's a terrible human being who had everything going for him, just very similar to the Giants and Seahawks corners who also did a very similar, or a very other stupid thing that we haven't touched on very much. Even though one of them isn't facing charges, which whatever.
No, it's all Baker.
Yeah, my What a Putts goes to Mr. Darius Geis.
I mean, are we really surprised? This is the Washington football team. I mean, They got Reuben Foster.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that's exactly it.
So are we really surprised?
There's some organizations that can do great things with players who have been in trouble, and these are Pittsburgh and New England and Green Bay and teams like that. And there's some organizations where the worst thing these guys can do is go there, and primarily that's Washington and Dallas. And I'd say even teams like the Raiders as well would maybe fall into that list. So, Mitch, who is your putts?
All right, so my putts is for the famous naysayers for people opting out, and specifically Deion Primetime Sanders and Joel Klatt. They came out on Twitter and said these things, so I'm going to start with Mr. Sanders. He said, All players opting out in all sports, please believe that the game will go on without you. This is a business, and don't you ever forget that. There is no one that's bigger than the game itself. Only the ref, umps, and officials are that important that you can't play without them, not you. And then Joel Klatt said, many in college football media have worked hard to push panic and fear. Seeing many prominent players push back tonight, good for them.
Yeah.
That's such a shame because, like, my football career got cut short by me being a dipshit and also me busting my knee up, right? And I would give anything to play one more game of football. But if by some grace of God I wake up in the morning and I'm in the body of, Nakia Watson or
Jake Kumaro.
Not Jake Kumaro because I can't play college football, or any guys, any college football player, man, and I have the opportunity to play. With everything that's going on, man, I might not. And I don't think we've always come from the opt-out portion, from a portion of understanding. And I think guys ragging on these guys for opting out isn't a part of that. So, yeah, that's a massive shame on you for Deion Sanders and Joel Klatt.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. These players are taking big steps in opting out, whether it's for financial or for health reasons. And for Deion Sanders to think that it's about them, it's not.
Yeah.
They're doing, for some of them, they're actually giving up football so that they can go help fight COVID. Yeah. So, Deion, it's not about you anymore, bud. You're done. My putz is Trevor Lawrence. For those of you that might not know, Trevor Lawrence has been instrumental in organizing college football players around the country in a sort of we want to play. He apparently talked to representatives from almost every team from every conference, from all the Power 5 conferences, and organized a list of demands, honestly. While again, 99.9% of the time support the players, and I totally agree that college football players and college basketball players and college athletes in general are exploited for their money by their universities and by the NCAA.
It's modern day slavery.
It's modern day slavery, and these kids are ruining their bodies, ruining their livelihoods, at a chance for higher education, at a chance for a big paycheck and a pro, and they're ragged on for taking a stand. This is the one time I'll rag on them. This is the one time where us as a country are so divided on an issue that we shouldn't be divided on. And I get it. The list of demands, when you actually look at them, are pretty reasonable. It's understandable. They just want safer precautions. They want the ability not to be judged for opting out. They want the ability to just kind of stay at their campuses. But here's the thing. We can find a way to keep these athletes at their campuses, have the institution around them to make sure that they're staying safe, that they're up on their nutrition, that they're going to be able to work out safely and effectively. We don't need a football season for that to happen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is not, again, Trevor Lawrence, this isn't about you. You're going to be drafted number 1 overall no matter what. Okay? Stop making it about you. And I hate you because you look like a cocky-ass motherfucker.
Yeah, and his knee wasn't down on the proposal. So
and his knee wasn't down on the proposal. So it's
like sunshine.
Yeah.
Lollipops and rainbows. But again, it's not about you, Trevor Lawrence. College football players, this is bigger than you. This is your chance to, especially for like a state like Nebraska, we don't have anything else. We have college football. And this is your chance to be like, no, we're going to do the right thing. And instead, you chose to do the wrong thing. Fuck you, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I understand these guys wanting to play. And as fans, like, I want to see them. Like, I want to watch these games. I absolutely do. But there has to also be an understanding of player safety. And for far too long, across all sports, including football, player safety has never been taken seriously, whether it was with concussions or major injuries or whatever it might be. It was never taken seriously. And I think now we should be giving conferences like the Big Ten and the Pac-12, frankly, a round of applause for taking this seriously, because a lot of these schools are going to lose a lot of money doing this, but they can't risk players getting hurt. And again, and I even brought it up, it may be just from a side of mitigation. It may be that they don't want to play the players because they don't want to get sued. But I think there is also a level of compassion there. So great list, you guys. We have a listener email. Before we get to the listener email, the next couple episodes we have are San Francisco and Seattle. On the next episode, we'll have a great understanding of the NBA playoffs. But we have a follow-up email to our email that we received on the last episode. First, Scott wanted to know, did Mitch get the contract extension that he was looking for, or did we have to slap him with the franchise tag? In the previous episode when Mitch was unhappy with his salary. Due to that, Mitch is on conduct detrimental to the team and has been placed on the practice squad. If anyone wants to sign him, please feel free.
We're calling it TJ. We're calling TJ up from the practice squad.
Yeah, I'm gonna get Molly on the podcast, my sister, and she'll take over from it. So I'll put a Zoom camera on Waffles, and we'll let Waffles Skype in. But no, his other follow-up question was, could we explain what the new piece of the offense is that Matt LaFleur is installing? We had a very good running game last year, so it can't be more than play action. Is getting rid of Jimmy Graham and adding Josiah Deguara the answer to what was missing? I'll start off with this one. I don't think Jimmy Graham had his faults, right, obviously, within the run blocking game, and I think Jay Sternberger and Josiah Deguara are going to fill in to step that hole. Fill in for that. This team wants to go play action. They want to go running the ball heavy. And even if you look back at some of Aaron Rodgers' really early success career, the offense we were running was a 2 tight end set with a lot of play action. And I think that's what Green Bay wants to get back into. They want to run the ball down your throat. They were running with tight end on either side, fullback, halfback, and usually one receiver out there. I think this year what we're going to see is a 2 tight end set with a halfback in the back and probably Adams and Valdez-Scantling or Kumaro or Lazard or whoever that second receiver is out there a lot because Sternberger and Deguara can really benefit with that. And that does also really set up matchups for guys like Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones against those linebackers because in that situation you're probably going to have a safety come down to cover the tight ends, which could easily be a body-on-body matchup beneficial to the Packers. And then that leaves Jones to be covered by linebackers. And with the Packers schedule, we even talked about in the episode, the linebacker core that they're facing isn't fantastically strong. And I think that's where it's going to be. But the Packers did also sign a couple of wide receivers today, Malik Turner and another one from Detroit.
Travis Fulgham.
Something like that. They are confident in their team. Equanimeous St. Brown is going to be back. They like Alan Lazard. They like Jay Kumaro. I think the next step is getting a lot more run heavy because the run offense was good. It just wasn't solid. And I think getting this team who struggled on third downs into more manageable third downs is going to be the key. Because if you can get to a 2nd and 4 or a 3rd and 2 and you give Aaron Rodgers that play action opportunity, man, we've seen it for the last 15 years. He's absolutely dominant.
Yeah, I agree with you for what the kind of offense they want to run. I think they're trying to run what the 49ers are running with Jimmy G right now.
Which makes sense with LaFleur's connection to Shanahan.
Yeah, for sure. I think Sternberger is obviously going to take the pass catcher kind of role. Mercedes Lewis will take the blocking, and then Deguara is going to be that utility tight end. He'll probably play like the fullback role and then, other stuff. So that's all covered. Obviously they want to lean into Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and I'm sure they want to get A.J. Dillon some traction. Yeah. Just so they see what they have in him and if he's worth it, if they have to let, 1 or 2 of the guys go. But when it comes to Jimmy Graham, I definitely think he was a bust from the beginning. We've had really big problems with signing tight ends, except for Jared Cook. But yeah,
But even then, Cook only played in like 6 games.
True.
Yeah, but he was instrumental in that win against.
You're absolutely right. But he had a high ankle sprain. He missed a lot of games, so it was upsetting they didn't re-sign him. But it was also understandable because he just couldn't stay healthy.
True, but then he goes out and balls with the Raiders and is doing pretty well at the Saints. So there's that.
You're absolutely right. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah, and we suck with that. For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Jimmy Graham's blocking is atrocious. I think, 7th grade football, you could see better blocking there. And as a pass catcher, which is the main thing that we wanted him to be, a red zone target, he was very lacking. There was a lot of drops and stuff like that. So I think we're a lot better with Jimmy G now in Chicago Bear territory, running that, 8 tight end formation. And I'm excited to roll these set of tight ends. And, for the offense, we kind of do. I think we're set at wide receiver with Adams and probably Lazard. So, yeah, that's the offense I think we're going to roll with.
From an outsider's perspective, you guys are kind of like New England, where you'll just take a wide receiver that nobody really knows about and make him work. You've done it you did it with Jordy. You're doing it with Lazard right now. I'm sure you'll find other players to do it with. I'm excited to see it because Matt LaFleur's pretty good at this offense thing. I'm glad to see Green Bay running the ball more. I think that's instrumental in them winning a Super Bowl, is them running more. As a Nebraska fan, I yearn for the days with Amon Green lining up in the backfield, running touchdowns for Green Bay, because that was always fun. But again, it's from an outsider's perspective, I have no idea what's going to happen because I'm not a Packer fan. But I also think that I agree with the Jimmy G sentiment. I think he's kind of lost his touch a lot. You guys should be okay at the wide receiver position. And your running back's pretty good. And you have that guy, I think his name is Rogers, underneath center. I think he's pretty good at the football thing. Yeah. I think he has like a championship belt thing that he kind of does every once in a while. I don't know.
He's got a couple MVPs.
Yeah, but no, you guys should be fine.
Yeah, and the thing with the wide receiver, and I see it all the time, is, why didn't Green Bay go get a wide receiver? Why don't they have anything? It's like, can we truly just understand that maybe they have faith in the wide receiver room that they have? And again, like we even talked about the Green Bay episode, Green Bay made overtures to get pretty much every wide receiver who is going to be available. Robbie Anderson, Emmanuel Sanders, AJ Green, the list goes on and on and on. It's just guys didn't sign with them, and it happens, So I think they're comfortable with the room. Alan Lazard was great. He was top 5, I think, in catch percentage as an undrafted guy coming out. Kumaro is solid. He's great in the open field. I'm curious to see a little bit more from Equanimeous St. Brown. He had a great preseason game against the Raiders, and I'd like to see him get a little bit more opportunity there. But again, I think this team is going to go a little bit more tight end heavy, the way that we did back in 2014 and before, when we had guys like Richard Rodgers and Jermichael Finley who were playing, when we had guys like John Kuhn who was running it out of the backfield or catching it out of the backfield. And I miss John Kuhn, but remember all the great plays he had like that. And Aaron Ripkowski stepped into that a little bit, but then he had the terrible NFC Championship game against the Falcons, and after that he was pretty much gone. So I think that fullback utility position, to me, the way that we've seen teams, especially like the 49ers, utilize Juszczyk, is going to be massive in the next step for the Green Bay offense. So with that, we appreciate it, Scott. Shout out to you. If you guys have any emails, listener emails, feel free to send us something on any episode we previously covered, anything we're going to cover in the future. We have San Fran and Seattle coming up next. Email us at fourthstringsp@gmail.com. Follow us on everything: Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, SoundCloud, Reddit, YouTube, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, slide into those DMs.
Yeah, slide into those DMs, man. Mitch needs it. So we appreciate everybody. The next episode will have a perfectly clear picture of the NBA playoff. The episode after that, or the NBA play-in, the episode after that, we'll begin to preview all NBA playoff games. And we're running down to the very end of our list of NFL teams. We're going to be able to get into real physical sports here. Supposedly, college football will start in September, depending on what conference you play in. So we'll have updates on that and everything. But we appreciate everybody listening. Boys, do you have any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to a certain NBA player. Before he lost to the Heat, TJ Warren was putting up monster numbers. So he was averaging 35 points a game. He was shooting 61% from the field and shooting 56% from the three-point line.
Okay, so now that the NBA has announced they're going to do some bubble awards, who wins MVP, TJ Warren or Devin Booker?
It's got to be TJ Warren. He's just putting up monster numbers, like I just said.
Yeah, but come on, 7-0 Suns.
It depends on if the Suns win tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair.
Tomorrow or Thursday.
Whenever they play. Yeah, Thursday they play next. So, Skylar, any closing thoughts?
No. Again, if you'd like to do our fantasy league, I know we haven't heard anything. I'm just going to keep reminding you guys because professional football, because NFL should be coming up here soon. Again, contact Brady at the email thing with the fourth string SP at gmail.com. if you're interested. If not, we're still going to do it because fantasy football is fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, just let us know. I'll get you added. It's literally like besides Reddit, the only thing I do for this podcast. So yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, then we appreciate everybody for tuning in. The next episode we have are the reigning NFC champion San Francisco 49ers. After that, we'll finish out the NFC West and talk about Seattle. We appreciate everybody tuning in and listening. Everybody have a fantastic night. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to episode 29 of the Fourth String Sports Podcast.